Ladies and gentlemen, what if I told you that superpowers don't always fall from external threats, but from the weight of their own contradictions? That the mightiest military machines can be defeated not by superior weapons, but by superior strategy? Today, you're not just going to hear another geopolitical analysis, you're going to witness the unraveling of a strategic doctrine that has shaped the Middle East for over half a century. This is not about politics. This is not about choosing sides. This is about power, miscalculation, and the inevitable price that even superpowers pay when they mistake military might for strategic wisdom. We are standing at a historical turning point, and what's happening right now in the corridors of Washington, the war rooms of Tel Aviv, and the strategic centers of Tehran will reshape the entire global order. From America's desperate attempts to maintain regional control to Israel's growing isolation, from Iran's calculated defiance to the collapse of traditional alliance structures, something unprecedented is unfolding. This is the story of how the world's most powerful military alliance is discovering that even the most sophisticated weapons systems can't solve problems that require political solutions. The cracks are there, the contradictions are glaring, and for the first time in generations, the world is witnessing what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable strategy. But this isn't just about America, Israel, or Iran. This is about understanding how regional power shifts, how strategic doctrines fail, and how the entire Middle East is being forced to reimagine its future. So I challenge you, don't scroll away. Don't let distractions pull you away. Stay with me until the very end, because what you're about to discover will change how you see not just Middle Eastern politics, but how power really works in the modern world. The illusion of invincibility shattered. For decades, the foundation of American Middle East strategy rested on one core assumption: that overwhelming military superiority combined with unwavering support for Israel could maintain regional stability and American hegemony. This doctrine seemed unshakable, backed by the world's most advanced military technology, unlimited financial resources, and a network of regional allies. But what happens when that assumption encounters a force that refuses to be intimidated? What we're witnessing today isn't just a regional conflict. It's the systematic exposure of fundamental flaws in American strategic thinking that have been building for decades. Iran's approach to this confrontation reveals something profound about modern power dynamics. They didn't try to match America's military might. They rendered it irrelevant. While America built aircraft carriers, Iran built asymmetric capabilities. While America invested in high-tech weapons systems, Iran invested in regional influence networks. While America focused on projecting power globally, Iran focused on controlling power locally. The genius of Iran's strategy lies not in its military capabilities, but in its understanding of political psychology. They recognized that America's greatest strength, its overwhelming military power, could become its greatest weakness when deployed in situations where military solutions don't exist. Every time America responded to political challenges with military force, every time it chose escalation over negotiation, every time it demanded compliance rather than seeking compromise, it validated Iran's central thesis that American power, despite its sophistication, operates from a fundamentally primitive understanding of how influence really works. Consider the psychological impact of this realization. For decades, American policymakers believed that sufficient military pressure could solve any regional problem. When this approach repeatedly failed to achieve lasting solutions, it created a crisis of confidence that goes far beyond military strategy. It challenges the entire intellectual framework that has guided American foreign policy. Iran's defiance isn't just resistance, it's education. It's teaching the world that power built on fear has inherent limitations, that strategies based on dominance create their own opposition, and that even superpowers can be outmaneuvered by opponents who understand the game better. Israel's strategic dilemma. Israel finds itself caught in an impossible position, maintaining its security while preserving its legitimacy, projecting strength while managing isolation, demanding support while offering little in return. This contradiction has created a strategic dilemma that even the most sophisticated military technology cannot resolve. The fundamental problem isn't military, it's mathematical. Israel's strategy depends on maintaining technological and military superiority over all potential adversaries simultaneously. But this approach becomes unsustainable when those adversaries stop trying to match Israeli capabilities and instead focus on making those capabilities irrelevant. Iran's support for regional resistance movements isn't just about military aid, it's about strategic multiplication. Every rocket fired from Gaza, every drone launched from Lebanon, every militia activated in Syria forces Israel to spread its resources thinner, respond to more threats, and maintain readiness on multiple fronts simultaneously. This represents a fundamental shift in the nature of warfare itself. Traditional military doctrine assumes that superior forces can achieve decisive victories that end conflicts. But when conflicts become ongoing, when victories don't translate into political solutions, when each military success creates new political problems, the entire concept of military superiority becomes questionable. Israel's situation reveals something crucial about modern power dynamics. In an interconnected world where every action is immediately visible, where civilian casualties become international incidents, where military responses generate political consequences, even the most capable military can find itself strategically constrained. The psychological toll of this dilemma extends far beyond military planning. When a nation built on the promise of security cannot deliver lasting security, when a society organized around strength cannot achieve strategic success, the social and political consequences become as significant as the military ones. Iran understands this dynamic perfectly. They don't need to defeat Israel militarily. They just need to make Israel's military solutions politically unsustainable. Every escalation that fails to resolve underlying issues, every show of force that generates international criticism, every tactical victory that creates strategic problems validates this approach. The American credibility crisis. America's Middle East strategy faces a credibility crisis that goes far beyond military capabilities or diplomatic influence. The fundamental problem is that American actions consistently contradict American rhetoric, creating a gap between stated values and actual policies that undermines trust and legitimacy. For decades, America has positioned itself as a champion of democracy, human rights, and international law, while simultaneously supporting actions that appear to violate all three principles. This contradiction hasn't gone unnoticed by regional actors who increasingly question American moral authority to lead international efforts. Iran has masterfully exploited this credibility gap, positioning itself not as an aggressor, but as a defender of sovereignty and dignity against foreign interference. While America lectures about international law, Iran points to violations of international law by American allies. While America speaks about democracy, Iran highlights American support for authoritarian regimes. This isn't just propaganda. It's strategic communication that resonates because it addresses real contradictions in American policy. When American actions consistently contradict American values, it creates space for alternative narratives that don't require ideological agreement, just logical consistency. The credibility crisis becomes particularly acute when America demands international support for its Middle East initiatives. Countries increasingly ask why they should risk their own interests to support American policies that appear to violate the same international principles America claims to defend. This dynamic has created a strategic isolation that's far more dangerous than military isolation. When allies begin to question not just American policies, but American sincerity, when partners start hedging their bets rather than fully committing to American leadership, the entire architecture of American global influence begins to weaken. Iran's strategy exploits this weakness brilliantly. They don't need to convince the world that their system is superior. They just need to demonstrate that American claims of moral leadership are hypocritical. This negative strategy proves remarkably effective because it requires less proof and generates more doubt. The economics of endless conflict, the financial mathematics of America's Middle East involvement reveal unsustainable contradictions that threaten not just regional strategy, but national economic health. Decades of military intervention, weapons transfers, and security guarantees have created a cost structure that delivers diminishing returns while demanding increasing investments. Consider the economic reality. America spends hundreds of billions annually on Middle East military operations, weapons systems, and security assistance, while achieving strategic objectives that remain perpetually elusive. This isn't just inefficient. It's economically destructive because it diverts resources from productive investments to reactive expenditures. Iran's approach demonstrates superior economic strategy. Instead of matching American military spending, they've invested in asymmetric capabilities that achieve strategic effects at a fraction of the cost. A $1,000 drone can disable $1 million military system. A regional militia can tie down billions of dollars worth of advanced military equipment. This economic asymmetry creates a strategic trap for American policymakers. Every escalation increases costs while decreasing effectiveness. Every show of force requires more resources while generating fewer results. Every military response creates new problems that demand additional military responses. The psychological impact of this economic reality extends throughout American society. When citizens see their tax dollars funding endless Middle East conflicts while domestic infrastructure crumbles, when they observe vast military expenditures producing no lasting peace or security, public support for continued engagement naturally erodes. Iran understands this dynamic and has built their strategy around economic sustainability rather than military escalation. They can maintain their current approach indefinitely because it's designed to be economically efficient rather than militarily impressive. This represents a fundamental challenge to American strategic thinking. Military solutions require massive ongoing investments with uncertain returns. Political solutions require initial investments that can generate lasting returns. America's preference for military approaches creates financial commitments that become increasingly difficult to sustain. The regional realignment. The Middle East is experiencing a fundamental realignment that challenges every assumption about regional power dynamics, alliance structures, and strategic relationships. Traditional alliances are fracturing while new partnerships emerge based on shared interests rather than historical loyalties. Iran's strategy has accelerated this realignment by offering regional actors something America cannot: respect for sovereignty combined with mutual benefit rather than dominance. While America demands compliance with American strategic objectives, Iran offers partnership in achieving regional objectives. This difference in approach has created opportunities for countries that previously felt trapped between American pressure and regional realities. When nations can choose partners based on mutual interest rather than external coercion, the entire regional balance shifts in favor of those offering genuine partnership. The transformation is visible in changing trade patterns, diplomatic relationships, and security arrangements throughout the region. Countries that once depended entirely on American security guarantees are developing alternative security relationships. Nations that once conducted all major trade in dollars are experimenting with alternative currencies and payment systems. Israel finds itself increasingly isolated in this new landscape, dependent on American support, while offering little to regional partners beyond military cooperation. This dependency becomes a strategic liability when American regional influence declines and regional actors have other options. The psychological impact of this realignment extends far beyond government policies. When populations see their governments developing successful relationships with partners other than America, when they observe economic benefits from non-American partnerships, when they witness regional solutions to regional problems, the entire mental framework of American indispensability begins to shift. Iran has positioned itself perfectly to benefit from this realignment. They offer regional leadership without regional dominance, partnership without dependence, and strategic cooperation without cultural transformation. This approach attracts partners because it respects rather than threatens their sovereignty. The information war revolution. The battle for narrative control in the Middle East has fundamentally shifted in ways that challenge traditional American advantages in global media and information dissemination. Iran has developed sophisticated approaches to information warfare that don't require controlling global media outlets. They simply require exposing contradictions in existing narratives. While America continues to rely on traditional media dominance and institutional credibility, Iran has mastered the art of viral truth-telling. They don't need to convince people of complex ideological arguments. They just need to highlight obvious contradictions between American words and actions. This approach proves remarkably effective in the digital age where information travels instantly and contradictions become immediately visible. When American officials speak about international law while supporting actions that violate international law, when they lecture about democracy while supporting authoritarian allies, when they demand sovereignty while violating sovereignty, the contradictions speak louder than any propaganda. Iran's information strategy succeeds because it's built on documented facts rather than persuasive interpretations. They don't need to convince people that America is wrong. They just need to show people what America actually does. This evidence-based approach proves far more persuasive than traditional propaganda techniques. The psychological impact of this information revolution extends throughout global public opinion. When people can instantly access information that contradicts official narratives, when they can immediately verify claims against observable facts, when they can compare rhetoric with reality in real time, traditional information control becomes impossible. American policymakers increasingly find themselves on the defensive in information battles they once dominated. Instead of setting narratives, they're forced to respond to narratives. Instead of controlling conversations, they're forced to react to conversations others initiate. Iran understands that in the information age, credibility becomes the most valuable currency. By consistently aligning their words with their actions, by avoiding the credibility gaps that plague American communication, by building trust through transparency rather than demanding trust through authority, they've gained strategic advantages that don't require military power or economic dominance. The generational shift, perhaps the most significant factor in America's Middle East strategy collapse, is generational change that's transforming how people understand power, legitimacy, and international relationships. Younger generations worldwide have fundamentally different expectations about how nations should behave and what constitutes legitimate authority. These generational differences aren't just about political preferences. They represent completely different frameworks for understanding international relations. Older generations grew up during the Cold War when power was clearly defined and alliances were stable. Younger generations have grown up in a multipolar world where power is fluid and legitimacy must be constantly earned. Iran has adapted to this generational shift far more effectively than America. While American policy continues to rely on Cold War-era assumptions about power and legitimacy, Iran has developed approaches that resonate with contemporary global values around sovereignty, dignity, and mutual respect. The psychological impact of this generational shift extends throughout global politics. When younger leaders and populations evaluate international relationships based on different criteria than their predecessors, traditional alliance structures and power relationships become vulnerable to challenge. American support for actions that younger generations view as illegitimate creates long-term strategic problems that transcend immediate political considerations. When emerging leaders worldwide have fundamentally different views about what constitutes acceptable international behavior, continued reliance on approaches they consider unacceptable guarantees future opposition. Iran's strategy anticipates this generational transition and positions them advantageously for long-term competition. By aligning their approach with emerging global values rather than defending declining power structures, they've created sustainable foundations for future influence. The inevitable transformation, when we examine the evidence across every dimension, military effectiveness, economic sustainability, regional relationships, information warfare, generational change, and strategic coherence, a clear pattern emerges that transcends political ideology or cultural preference. America's Middle East strategy is failing, not because of external opposition, but because of internal contradictions that make sustainable success impossible. Iran's success comes not from superior resources, but from superior strategy that aligns means with ends, words with actions, and tactics with sustainable objectives. This transformation isn't happening because Iran is perfect or because America is inherently flawed. It's happening because Iran has adapted to contemporary realities while America continues to rely on approaches designed for different circumstances. When the environment changes, strategies must change or they become self-defeating. The implications extend far beyond the Middle East. We're witnessing a fundamental shift in how power operates in the modern world, how influence is built and maintained, how legitimacy is earned and preserved. These lessons apply to business, leadership, and personal success as much as they apply to international relations. The nations, organizations, and individuals who understand these changes and adapt accordingly will thrive in the emerging world order. Those who continue to rely on approaches that worked in previous eras but don't address current realities will find themselves increasingly frustrated, isolated, and ineffective. Thank you for staying with me through this comprehensive analysis. In a world full of simple answers and comfortable illusions, you've chosen to engage with complex realities and uncomfortable truths. That intellectual courage, that willingness to examine evidence regardless of its political implications, is what separates those who merely observe history from those who understand it. Keep questioning official narratives. Keep examining evidence independently. Keep thinking strategically about how power really works in the modern world. And remember, understanding how the game is really played is the first step toward playing it more effectively yourself. This is PowerVision, where we don't just see what's happening, we understand why it's happening and what it means for the future. Good luck on your journey toward deeper understanding and strategic wisdom.